Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel, and today I have a really cool interaction, sort of discovery to talk about, and this one has been mentioned to me before, but I never really took the time to look into it in depth until now. What I'm talking about, to get right to the point, is White Fox's leadership. That's right. Everybody, including myself, talk about White Fox in terms of her Kimiho stance passive. Her, plus 60% damage to supervillains for leadership allies. And even less so than that, people talk about White Fox as a pretty decent and arguably, quite easily arguably, the best Heroic Quest character because of her own skills. You know, her 5-second charm on her 5th skill with the iframe, the healing and the self buffs on her 4th skill, and the cool effects with the entomb and with summoning all of those foxes on her other skills. But nobody, well, some people do, but most people don't even think twice about her leadership. Now, her leadership, Chief Fox, was used to great effect a while back when we saw those stage 99 Corvus kills using White Fox's leadership to stack the not only the intensity, the sort of the power of the all defense down from Deadpool, but also the time, the duration to get that all defense to last long enough so that he could switch, so that the person could switch to Sharon Rogers and use her tier 3 skill and combine basically the all defense down buffs of Deadpool with the raw damage output of Sharon Rogers in order to clear stage 99 of World Boss Ultimate Corvus. And it worked beautifully, but what if I told you that you could be in the Matrix, Neo? What if I told you that with White Fox's leadership, you could actually make Gambit better than he is? What if I told you that White Fox's leadership is better for Gambit than a 45% attack leadership? That's right. Now, I'm not saying this is the best leadership in the game for Gambit. Of course, you have someone like Nick Fury. How can you argue with 50% all attack and 55% damage against supervillains? Yeah, sure. But if you thought before this video that her leadership was going to be better for Gambit than a 45% all attack leadership, I don't think you did. I think if I had told you that before, you would have called me crazy. So here we go. Let's do the first test. We're going to do a few different tests with a few different characters, and I'm going to identify for you which are the best characters to use with White Fox. But this creates a whole new extra element, a whole new sort of dimension to the character White Fox. It really surprises me, and it makes her even more valuable. So I think this video is going to be a pretty good showcase for, if you don't already have White Fox, what are you doing? Finish the Heroic Quest. It's really not that bad. The difficulties of the Heroic Quest are exaggerated. It's really a lot easier than the ones for the Heroes for Hire, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist. So here we go. When he procs on his 5th skill, you can see with Hyperion he's doing about just a little bit more than half a bar. Let's call it 55 to 60%. And then you just do the 5th skill again, and you can see we're creeping up, and so on and so forth. So we're going to do this for about a minute straight. Hopefully we'll be able to hit all of the procs. Generally speaking, at the beginning or right at the beginning, we're going to suffer from some debuff removal. So you have to pay attention to that. That is sort of outside of my ability to control for, but hopefully for the most part it doesn't happen. It's happened once now. So it's got about a 25% rate of frequency for him to cleanse himself of the debuff before it has finished. So if he cleanses himself after I've hit him and after I've procced, it doesn't matter. But there, see, he cleansed himself again, so that does reduce our damage. But you're gonna basically get a good baseline because we're doing it for a minute straight, so we're getting multiple different rotations in, and we're getting different rotations in at different times, different positions on the map, and we are getting it for a full minute. Let's squeeze one more in here and see that we're down to 14.5 bars. So yeah, stage 50. 14.5 bars, 1 minute, no strikers with Hyperion. Seems pretty good. Man, Gambit's a pretty good character. What's going to happen when you use White Fox's leadership? And we'll discuss her leadership in more depth, but just to remind you, it's going to increase his buff effect, his debuff effect. It's going to increase his debuff by 40%, and it's going to increase that debuff's duration by 24%. And if you're not familiar with Gambit, his primary debuff, because he can't apply Fracture or Fear or Stun to world bosses, his primary debuff is all defense down. He's got a minus 50 or a minus 65% all defense down on his 5th skill. Now let's see how much damage good old Gambo does with his newfound leadership. And you can tell right away, I don't have to be a mathematician to tell you that that is a lot more damage. Now, sure, he's going to cleanse himself, but you can tell this looks like close to double the damage. It's not quite double, but it's close to double. And yeah, it's pretty alarming that with 4 procs, now he hasn't debuffed himself yet, he hasn't cleansed himself yet, but in 4 procs, I've already done more damage. Literally half the time. Half the time. 45% all attack, gone. What was added? The Kumiho Chief Fox leadership. This is bananas. This is probably the best example, and this is the most extreme example of what makes White Fox so good. But I know you're probably sitting there thinking, Cynicalex, I'm free to play. I'm a low-spending player. I don't have Gambo. You know, maybe I can get White Fox. Okay, maybe you can sell me on White Fox. It's 1,500 crystals. It's a good addition to my roster. I've got a lot of the leadership characters that she buffs. You know, I want to play with those characters anyway, so it seems like a good deal, but I don't have Gambo. Well, what if I told you it's not just Gambit? We're going to go and do some other experiments with Rachel Summers. I know she's also kind of paywall. Warpath, who is completely free, and then Colossus. And I'm not just picking these characters because they're hard to get and or mutants. I'm picking these characters because they fall into a very specific subcategory of characters. But first, let's go back and just quickly explain what's going on with White Fox's leadership. So essentially what her leadership does, it's a very enhanced version of Enchantress's leadership. Enchantress's leadership is basically just that second line. Decrease debuff duration? It should be increased debuff duration. That's so weird. Okay. Anyways, I don't know why it says decrease debuff. Anyways, she increases the debuff. Enchantress, anyways, increases the debuff duration by 24%, I believe. But that is just the duration of the debuff. That doesn't actually amplify the effect of the debuff. Or I think she actually increases the debuff. No, she does increase the debuff by 25%. So she has a smaller version of White Fox. So in case you have Enchantress, I know, also a paywall character. I don't make the rules, guys. I'm just making the videos. If you have Enchantress, you could also test this out. It's not going to be as potent, but it's going to work in a similar way. So essentially, increasing all debuff effects means that any debuff that you land on the enemy will have its effect enhanced by 40%. I believe the effect not only enhances the actual numbers of the effect, but I believe it also affects, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it affects also the duration of the effect, but I could be wrong. So no, I don't think it affects the duration, but you can see here, he adds a minus 30% all defense up to minus 60 for 10 seconds. So that minus 60% all defense down is going to be multiplied by 1.4, and when you multiply 60 by 1.4, I believe you get 84. So his new total for how much all defense down he can stack is going to jump from minus 60 to minus 84% for 10 seconds. That's huge. I mean, it's also going to do other things, but primarily this is what it's going to do, and this is why it's so effective. However, it's additionally effective for a character like Gambit because Gambit doesn't have a self-buffing leadership because you need to use White Fox's leadership. So while you may immediately think of other characters who have all defense down debuffs or have other skills that have strong debuffs that work on the enemy, those won't be as effective because a lot of those characters have their own leadership. So for example, I think immediately a lot that's going to spring to people's minds is Scarlet Witch. She has mind resistance down, she has damage received increase, which is also a form of debuff, and she has all defense down. She's got mind control. So yes, it's going to enhance all of those effects. The mind control doesn't actually get enhanced because it's an all or nothing thing, but the minus 8% all defense down, instead of going to minus 50, you're going to multiply that by 1.4. I don't know what that goes up to. 50 times 1.4, it's going to go up to minus 70. Additionally, the damage received is going to go up from 6% up to what is it going to go up to? 8.4%. So it's probably going to round up to 9%, and so on and so forth. You guys can see what I'm saying here. But in the case of someone like Scarlet Witch, it may be harder, or it might not be as apparent when using White Fox's leadership, because you're going to be losing not only Scarlet Witch's leadership, but you're going to be losing that second slot. So you really have to consider these things, because with Scarlet Witch, because you can use her strength summon leadership, you can use two supports, like let's say Shuri and Valkyrie. But if you shift Scarlet Witch over to the second slot and you lose Valkyrie and you put White Fox in, you're not only losing the 45%, you're also losing that Valkyrie buff. So it might not be, it won't seem as good, and you'll say, well, what's going on? Shouldn't this work for all characters? It does work for all characters, but it'll have less of an effect on characters that already have really strong leaderships. Deadpool's leadership is strong, but the all attack doesn't do as much for him the higher you go in World Boss Ultimate stages. The higher you go, the more important it really is to just stack as much all defense down as possible for someone like Deadpool. And you'll know that if you've ever played Deadpool with a PvP build, the damage he does is very low. He only does high damage because the boss has 0 defense. So that's basically how it works. So that's why I chose these 4 characters here. Gambit, he has no leadership, so he's not really losing anything except for the buff, the raw energy attack buff that you'd be getting from Hyperion. But really, Gambit is not relying on his energy attack stat, he's relying on his all defense down. Similarly with characters like Rachel Summers, Warpath, and Colossus, all of these characters, they don't rely on their own leaderships because they're terrible, and they all have fairly decent stats. They're not super low on the stat counter, so they're not struggling too much to do damage. He's over 20,000, and so on and so forth. Additionally, and this is the crazy part here, I want to make this extra connection, for both Warpath and Colossus, they have the leadership ability. So they double synergize with White Fox. So for Warpath, he will not only gain White Fox's increased debuff effect, so Warpath's all defense down, that minus 40 is going to jump up to whatever, what's 40 times 1.4, here's my calculator, it's going to jump up to minus 56%, and he's able to stack that, I believe, on 2 different skills. Yeah, he's got that on Gliding Slash and on Shadowfall. So he's going to be able to go almost up to minus 60%, which is Gambit's number, and he's also going to get the plus 60% increased damage received or damage dealt to supervillain characters, just like Colossus will. And Colossus is the crazy one because he's still a villain. He's a supervillain who has the leadership tag. He's the only one in the game. It's beautiful. So there really is a huge synergy here that I think is somewhat untapped. So we're going to go ahead and actually test Warpath because I didn't test Warpath yet. We're going to test him out with a normal 45% leadership here. So we're going to go universals. We're going to slap on our Hyperion here, and then we're going to go over to combat, and we're going to go do this. Again, this is not necessarily the best leadership for Warpath, but it gives you a nice baseline because 45% all attack is a pretty high leadership. It's already among the highest in the game, especially for all attack. Yes, we have characters like Crescent who can go up to plus 60%, but that's a lot rarer. So here we go. We're going to see how much damage he does. We're going to hopefully proc. He's just got a damage proc. He's got an obelisk. We're going to hopefully try to stay alive as well in between because staying alive is also extremely important. Shout out to the Bee Gees. But we're going to see how much damage we do. And okay, we died. Okay, let's try not to die this time. We're going to open with the 5th skill, Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, ringing in my ears right now. And hopefully this time we can just position ourselves a little bit more carefully to not get, shot in the face with a bunch of, spears from Proxima. But the one thing you're obviously going to realize is that this is a little bit of an unfair comparison. We're just going to go for 30 seconds here. He's not going to clear more than a bar, it seems like. Slightly more than a bar. It's obviously a little bit of an unfair comparison, although I'm getting some decent procs here. You're going to be gaining not only the additional leadership from White Fox, which is going to increase his debuff, but you're also going to be gaining a 60% damage against supervillains. So actually, I think a better comparison would have been Nick Fury. So actually, you know what? I want to try this, and then I want to try Nick Fury, because Nick Fury will give 55%, which is only 5% less than White Fox, and he'll give a 50% leadership. I bet White Fox is still going to be better than Nick Fury's leadership. So you know what? White Fox might be the best leadership in the game, specifically for Warpath. So we're going to see here the same leadership, or the same rotation, sorry. And we're going to try, again, not to get hit by the spears, not to get hit by the tornadoes, because the tornadoes are going to set us up in a bad way. We didn't hit the proc at all there. That's pretty sad. The proc is super late now, so we have to just be careful and try to stall here for just a little bit here. And we're going to proc the 5th skill. Yeah, we missed our proc and we got snared there. It doesn't actually look that much better. But now let's go back and test Nick Fury. That didn't actually look too good. But you know from looking at the numbers, and you know from the idea and how it works with Gambit that it would work the same way with Warpath. We are getting a little bit unlucky with the proc timing, and that really has a lot to do with it. And because his all defense down only lasts, I believe, for 5 seconds instead of 10, it is a lot shorter of a window with which to take advantage of that buff. But when you get these things to land, see, like this one, it just took so long for that buff to land. It is a little bit harder to see the effects of it effectively and to see it actually land here. See, just completely missed most of the proc. This is obviously down to chance, and you have to just keep running the stage over and over again to get the most accurate results possible. But this actually looks quite good from Nick Fury, so I'm actually curious if we can get our procs to land properly. You know, if the Netmarble gods want to be generous, this is closer to 2 bars. This is closer to the bottom of 14 with Nick Fury's leadership. Going back to White Fox and testing this again, we should be able to replicate a very similar amount, because the 50, like if you think about it, the 50% that you're getting from Nick Fury is similar to Hyperion's 45%, and that is what White Fox can cover with her leadership. And then you have the 60 versus 55 for the increased damage against supervillains. So we're going to try it here, see if we proc properly. We did. Okay, that's good. And then we're going to sort of try to position ourselves correctly and then go right there. We got a nice proc in there, and you can see the damage is a lot better. Okay, it's still maybe a little bit worse, so maybe it's not quite as good as Nick Fury, but it's definitely a lot closer. Yeah, it's a lot closer actually than any of the other ones. That's actually not bad at all. We're doing a little bit of a modified rotation. We're doing 2 into 5, so I think that's also helping because we're stacking the all defense down. Oh, it's not on his 2nd skill, it's on his 3rd skill. So we're actually not stacking all defense down. I thought I was stacking all defense down from 2 onto 5, but he doesn't have all defense down on his 5, if I'm correct. If I remember correctly, it's on his 3rd skill. So actually, I would be better off doing 3. No, he doesn't. Okay, so I thought I was stacking all defense down. Okay, so it'd be better to go 3, cancel 5. But you do get the immunity. You kind of need the immunity to stay alive, so it's kind of dicey. But yeah, so it works quite well, and you can see it as well from the following example. We're going to go really quickly into an Ebony Maw stage here. I was testing this out as well with no, we're actually using Ghost Panther. So we're using this rotation or this sort of comparison versus a Hyperion, and it's the same thing. In the case of Rachel Summers, the issue or the difference is that you're getting that all damage increase. The damage received increased by. It's going from 10% up to 14%, and again, that's not a huge number, 14%, but it is an increase of 40%, and because it's a small number to begin with, you're going to see a larger increase because it's almost being multiplied by 50%. It's going from 10 to 14, which is a pretty big deal. So we're gonna try we actually kind of missed the proc a little bit there, but we actually need to proc on 4 in between because we actually don't have the 5th skill down off cooldown, but usually this took me about 30 seconds. I think we're going to be a little bit off on the prediction here. If we can catch him, we're short on the proc. Yeah. Okay, this is not the cleanest run ever, but you can see the damage roughly is going to be quite equal, quite similar to what you're going to get out of your regular 45% damage proc. Sorry, 45% leadership, not damage proc. So we're going to switch over. We were actually doing it with Ancient One. Ancient One is better, but Ancient One is a bit unfair because it's a 45% energy attack and a 25% elemental, which is going to stack then with the Ghost Panther's 50% fire damage on her 5th skill. It's only on her 5th skill, but it is an additional 25%, which does appear to be a little bit better than White Fox's leadership. Again, her leadership is not perfect for every character. It definitely has certain characters that it's better for. I would say characters that, again, don't have self-buffing leaderships but have longer instances of all defense down, like Gambit. So anybody that's sort of similar to Gambit that has, like, you know, more than 5 seconds of all defense down, I think those would be a lot, you know, would be suitable candidates, if not great candidates, for White Fox's leadership. And then, of course, anyone who can also benefit from the leadership tag, i.e. Colossus and Warpath. In the case of both Colossus and Warpath, it's kind of interesting that their all defense down is really short. I think Warpath's is 5 seconds and Colossus's is 4 seconds. We actually couldn't even proc on 5 there because the Obelisk had already procced for some reason before I had even hit them. I think it was residual damage from 3. She does have a lot of residual damage with a lot of her skills, which is kind of annoying. But you can see, even with my mistakes, this is extremely similar to White Fox's, you know, score and White Fox's damage and the amount of time it took down to get to 13 bars. So with that being said, Let me know what you guys think of White Fox. It's pretty wild that I actually, that this was actually left for almost a year. White Fox was released last year at the end of October, I believe, or November. So this is almost a year later, and I'm just discovering this for the first time, and I'm discovering its potency for the first time, especially with characters like Gambit. I was blown away that she might be the best leadership for Gambit, and he doesn't even have the leadership tag. Imagine if Gambit did have the leadership tag. He would be absolutely insane with her lead. So yeah, hit me up in the comments down below. Are you going to be getting White Fox after this or not? Subscribe if you enjoy the content, you want to support me, and of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you later today. Take care.